Oh, hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Rebel Roundup. It is Wednesday, which means it's Western Wednesdays, wherein we convene the Buffalo panel. I'm your host, Sheila Gunn Reid, and I'm joined by my panelists today, my boss, Ezra Levant. Anxious that he's watching because I'm supposed to keep the two rambunctious fellas on the bottom of the show in check. Our other panelists are prominent constitutional lawyers at the forefront of the independence movement here in Alberta, Jeffrey Rath and Keith Wilson. How are you, everybody?
Doing great. We're fighting for the freedom of our province, and as my colleague, Mr. Rath, will attest, we're making great progress.
Yeah, same. I'm really happy to be here this morning. We had a wonderful event out in Springbank last night, and we had close to 200 enthusiastic Albertans out to celebrate the progress of the Alberta petition campaign, and we're really excited with our progress.
Yeah, it's quite something to see. The momentum is not waning for these independence town halls. Months into this, and we're still seeing town halls being packed in small places and big places all across the province. I will tell everybody what we're doing, and then I guess we'll get right into the show because it's packed and we've got news breaking out of Calgary that I'm sure everyone will want to react to. If you're watching us on Rumble, that's an excellent free speech platform. They don't care what your politics are, and I think that's exactly how it should be. If you want to get involved in the show, we ask you to do something for us because we will never take a penny from any level of government to do the work that we do here at Rebel News. To hold them to account, we would just be politically contaminating ourselves if we did that. So if you want to leave us a Rumble rant, that's our paid chat over there. If it's over the $5 US cutoff, we'll read it and address it on air. If it's under that, we'll do our best to get to it, time permitting. If you are watching us on YouTube, where we are swiftly approaching 2 million subscribers, you can leave a super chat over there. That's their paid chat. And if you missed the live version of the show, but you are thus moved by the spirit to support the little network that could, you can leave a paid comment called a super thanks, and that'll show up highlighted for everybody to see. So make it good. Okay, that's it. Let's get into the first topic of the day. And I guess I'll go to Ezra to react first, but this is out of Calgary. Former mayor, thankfully, Jyoti Gondek had her home raided by police amid corruption allegations. And it wasn't just Jyoti Gondek. The searches targeted former city councillor Sean Chu and sitting Ward 10 councillor Andre Chabot, I don't know how to say his name. Police say all three are cooperating with authorities. Sounds like Gondek's cell phone has been seized as well. I think Chabot, his cell phone was also seized, and I don't know the extent of the investigation where it is with Sean Chu, but I'll go to Ezra for reaction. So this touches on past council and current council as well.
You know, there's so much money sloshing around in every level of government, and I'm not surprised in our low trust society that corruption is becoming more commonplace. We have it in all across the country. Recently, the Toronto Police Force was revealed to be investigating a number of criminals embedded within the police department. To get a sneak attack ambush search warrant like this, it requires a high bar because you're going to court without the other side there. So the judge is going to say, I need to be convinced that there really is something here. We will later get access to those information to obtain, as they're called, which would be an affidavit typically sworn by a police officer saying, here's what we need, here's why we think a crime's been committed, here's what we want to get. So this isn't a casual thing. I imagine that to do a search warrant on a former mayor required quite a senior officer to sign off on it, probably the police chief, or if this was the RCMP, the boss of the Alberta RCMP. So very serious stuff. But I just don't think we know more about it than that. So we know it was serious enough to get a judge to issue a search warrant against a former mayor. I don't think we know anything beyond that.
No, I mean, it looks like they're looking for communications, likely between the three of them, maybe. And again, I'm just speculating, but I'll go to Jeffrey, because Jeffrey, before we went on air, you said much of the same things that Ezra just did. There's so many opportunities, especially in Canadian politics, to just be corrupt. at all levels of government. So, we're left to speculate what this could possibly be about, whether it's, sole source contracting or preferential awards, anything like that.
Well, and that's the thing with municipal politics. There's so many different ways that corrupt officials on council, can benefit, people to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, a rezoning as an example, which is a pretty simple, easy thing to do, could be worth, hundreds of millions of dollars. But I don't want to speculate as to what the investigation is about. They haven't really announced anything yet. I was listening on the radio last night on the way to Springbank, and of course, Jody Gondek and her lawyers have issued a statement. They're just baffled as to why the police could be looking at her, and of course, they're going to do everything they can to cooperate. And then I also understood from that radio broadcast last night that Mr. Shabbat has already retained the best criminal lawyer in town, who's a friend of mine, Alain Hepner, to represent him. So I think they're taking the charges very seriously, and it looks like they're all lawyering up to a very high and expensive level. So, I mean, other than that, I don't know. I don't know much else to say.
Yeah, Keith.
Well, this one of the things that Jeff and I and others talk about as to why Alberta needs to become independent is because the old Canada that we have romantic notions about no longer exists. And we believe, and others believe, that it actually still exists in Alberta, that the Canada that people were once patriotic about and the values and the concerns of Canadians still exist in Alberta, and we want to preserve that and to some extent recreate it. And the very notion, because I'm old enough to remember, when the police, when they thought they had information that politicians were engaged in corruption, would investigate and seize documents and things, just like we're seeing happening in Calgary, Alberta. But what's remarkable is there has been such compelling evidence of extreme and perverse corruption in Ottawa, and the RCMP have turned into Schultz from Hogan's Heroes, So I guess it's encouraging to see that, at least in Alberta, the police can still investigate and ensure that our hard-earned taxpayer dollars are not being abused.
I think that's a really good point, is that, we don't know what Jody Gondek is accused of doing, but we do know what Justin Trudeau and even Mark Carney are not just accused of doing, but acknowledged doing with complete impunity from the RCMP. And this isn't new. This goes back to the RCMP saying they had sufficient information to charge Justin Trudeau with taking that $100,000 gift vacation from the Aga Khan. I think Keith makes a good point about how the Canada we know today is not the same. It's not the same country as we had a generation ago. Look, Sheila, I think that we've got a special opportunity here. There's a lot of interesting news out there, but we have, for I don't know how many more minutes, two of the leading change makers on the independence file, and I think it behooves us to focus on that issue because we've got them here. There are. I saw the list of agenda items for the show, but frankly, I think our viewers would love to get the state of the art of the independence campaign, how the petition signing is going, what they think about some of the counter posts by people like, say, Jason Kenney, who seems to be taking the Captain Canada hat, what we think about Indigenous complaints about this. I want to really give Keith and Jeffrey the floor here because I know I'm not alone when I say I want an update.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to apologize to Olivia and Efron for throwing their hard work out the window because they put together the agenda. But Ezra is absolutely right. When we have two of the most prominent faces of the independence movement sitting with us for at least the next, let's just say 20 minutes or so, we should pick their brains. So before we came on air, Jeffrey was hinting to us that he was going through some 400-ish pages of documents that are being leveled at the independence movement from the Indigenous bands.
Yeah, and it's pretty remarkable when you read what their lawyers are doing. They're effectively applying for an injunction or a stay by way of judicial review of the decision of the chief electoral officer to certify Mitch Sylvester's petition to go forward. So in effect, they're trying to undo, months and months of very hard work by hundreds of thousands of Albertans who are interested in independence. And these briefs, like hundreds of pages of briefs, and it's based on a complete misconception of the law. I think, as most people know, like Keith knows, I've spent 34 years of my life pioneering the law in and around Indigenous consultation in Canada. And these lawyers seem to think that you can just wave the word treaty rights and wave the word consultation in the air, like some sort of magical invocation or magical wand, and somehow or other it'll force citizens or stop citizens from being able to communicate with their elected representatives in a manner prescribed by the legislature. I mean, these briefs are some of the most ludicrous things that I've ever read, and they ignore, the early consultation cases dealt with actual infringements of actual rights, like somebody tying a surveying ribbon on somebody's corral rail marked center of road, and they're going to come in with bulldozers and bulldoze, a road through the middle of a 100-year-old Indigenous hunting camp that has been there basically since time immemorial. That's a clear infringement of an existing right that could easily be addressed by moving the road a kilometer or two down the road, or down, east or west or whatever it is. There's solutions to these problems that can be addressed through consultation. But these lawyers and these chiefs, I think, have been misadvised by these lawyers to think that all they have to do is the government has an obligation to consult with us, and therefore the government wanting to consult with its own citizens by way of a legislatively mandated process should stop because we have a veto and we say so. It's like none of these people went to law school. I'm just baffled when I read these briefs to try to figure out where the hell they're coming from.
Keith, I want to ask, sorry, Ezra, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was going to.
No.
I know that
Jump
Keith
in.
has spent a lot of time addressing Indigenous concerns, and I'd love to hear his reaction. I'm not sure what written documents you're referring to, Jeff, if these are a legal factum or affidavits,
Briefs.
but I don't know. Keith, have you
These
read
are
these
legal
documents
briefs
as well?
These are legal briefs that have been filed in these judicial review applications, and then a very misconceived injunction application being brought by a lawyer by the name of Orla O'Kelly in Edmonton. Everybody should remember that Orla O'Kelly was the same lawyer, along with another lawyer by the name of Sharon Roberts, who thought it was a good idea to run into court to get a court order remasking children in Alberta, after the pandemic emergency had been declared to an end. The Alberta Teachers Association and the lawyers thought it was a good idea to try to have every child in the province ordered by a judge against their parents' will to be remasked in the schools. And of course, that injunction was roundly rejected by the court. And, we're hoping that this is heading in the same direction.
Well, what I would say, Ezra, is that Jeff and I have a great deal of respect for one another, and we decided that only one of us was going to have to suffer through reading these things. There was no point in ruining our days. But what I can say with confidence is that every level, this application by a few of the chiefs is frivolous and vexatious and politically motivated. There is no fact pattern under which that's before the court or that's contemplated where either treaty rights or traditional First Nation Aboriginal rights would be in any way abrogated, in any way breached, in any way compromised. The idea of citizens engaging in the process of petition is the oldest form of democracy. It's an essential element of democracy that citizens are able to petition their government. And as Jeff's pointed out, if the court gets an injunction, it would be equivalent to getting issues an injunction. It would be equivalent of issuing an injunction to citizens saying you can't write to your MLA. It's a perfect analogy. Mm-hmm. This is absolutely outrageous. If we vote, each First Nation citizen gets the right to sign the petition just like anyone else. They have nothing special there. Each First Nation, after the vote for independence on October 19th, if we're successful, each First Nation will have a decision to make. Do they want the status quo where their treaty is respected and their treaty lands are continue to be administered just like they are today? There's no requirement, there's no necessity for change. If they want the status quo, if that's what they decide, they can have it. If they want Alberta to step into the shoes of the federal government and administer the treaties They can ask for that and the parties can agree only if the First Nations agree and ask. Or some of the First Nations, I suspect, are going to say, these are really old documents. We want a more modern relationship. So there's nothing threatening here. This is pure politics. And I certainly hope the court realizes how improper it would be for a court to interfere in the democratic process of petition.
I got one more question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add to that. One of the things I'd like all of the chiefs to internalize is, why do they think that they're going to be so much worse off when Alberta is no longer sending $15 billion a year to Quebec, and that money could be staying in Alberta, to assist in coming to a renewed relationship with the Indigenous communities of Alberta to help lift them out of the poverty that Ottawa has left them in. And then the other thing is too, getting back to these court applications and following up on Keith's point, that's what's been bothering me about this whole application. It's this idea that somehow, and again, it's just bad lawyering as far as I'm concerned, that lawyers would suggest to a client that, that they could succeed in getting an injunction to prevent a citizen from communicating with their elected representative. And again, the judge actually said in a case management meeting, she said, look, the odds of me stopping the gathering of petition signatures is slim to none. So, we should be focusing on what happens after, the chief electoral officer, receives the petition and the petition signature. But now at this point, it's almost the equivalent of saying, oh yeah, we're not going to stop citizens from mailing a letter to their MLA or to the premier, but we want a mandatory injunction to place censors in all of the MLA's office and all of the premier's office to open all of the mail. And if there's any communication coming in the mail that's offensive to the chiefs, it should not be forwarded on to the MLA or the premier. It's, an absolute abrogation of the democratic process. And quite frankly, one of the most nonsensical court applications that I've ever witnessed as a lawyer going on 35 years of practice.
Jeff, let me just jump in for a second. If you have some headphones nearby, it's a bit of an echo when you're talking, and I want to make sure you sound absolutely as good as possible on the show. And I apologize for interrupting with that technical point. Keith, what is the nature of this? Is it an emergency application before a judge? Has the judge been chosen yet? Do we know which judge is going to hear this? Or is there room for interveners to come in? Because I would be curious if other people would want to give a representation as a friend of the court to the judge.
No, Justice all said it's an ordinary course judicial review. It's a special chambers application. It's the normal process you follow when you're challenging a governmental decision. The parties are pretty much established, and it's subject to case management. So it's going to hearing, I believe. I think there's a first hearing on the 7th of April, and then there's the main 2-day hearing.
No, it's a 4-day hearing, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th in Edmonton. And so there's no interveners. I mean, you have 2 separate judicial review applications, one by the chiefs of the Blackfoot Confederacy, one by the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation. And then we have this bizarre lawsuit filed by Orla O'Kelly seeking the injunction, which has been filed on behalf of Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation, where in effect, they're seeking declarations and seeking court orders to say that the legislature of Alberta, by mandating a process by which citizens can communicate their wishes to the government by petition, has somehow infringed or abrogated treaty and Aboriginal rights. And I have to say, as a lawyer who's the only lawyer in that courtroom, and quite frankly, a lawyer in Canada who's won more treaty and Aboriginal rights cases than any other lawyer in the country, that this whole notion that they're pursuing makes absolutely no sense. I know the Alberta treaties backwards and forwards. The Mikisew case I won at the Supreme Court of Canada, I won the point that even the oral promises actually form part of the treaty, not an interpretive aid of the treaties. I know the oral promises of all of these treaties backwards and forwards. I've won consultation cases under every treaty in Alberta. And, there's nothing in any of those treaties or oral promises that says, that First Nations will have a treaty right to prevent citizens of Alberta from communicating with their government. It's ridiculous.
Keith, let me go to you about the politics, because it sounds like this case, well, I tell you one thing, if these injunctions are granted and Albertans are told they can't have a referendum, Quebec had 2 referendums, but if Alberta is not allowed to have its referendum because of a judge, I think that will actually make independence ferocious, especially if the judge is a federal appointee. But can I ask about my old friend Jason Kenney, who I think has fallen into being the advocate for the Remain side of this referendum. I'd like your thoughts on him, Keith. First of all, I understand that you may have been invited to debate him. Has that invitation happened? Has a think tank or something asked you to go head to head with him? What do you make of his energetic activism for the Remain side?
Well, I'm glad there's someone trying to make the case for staying in Canada, because it's one of the things Jeff and I have struggles with, is finding someone who can at least make a cogent argument as to why there's even one reason that it would be in my kids' and grandkids' best interest to do that. Yes, I did receive 2 invitations, been negotiating the details over the last month. So I have agreed to 2 public debates with Mr. Kenney, the former premier. One will be at the Civitas conference in early May in Edmonton, and the second one will be a wide open public event put on by the Aristotle Society, Mark Milkey's group, in Calgary, I think around the 21st of May. I think there'll be some public announcements coming out. And what I keep coming back to is each time I ask myself, why am I doing this? Why am I so supportive of independence? It's because by every single measure that I can think of, every practical aspect, every economic viewpoint, social, political, it just makes sense. There's no good reason for Alberta to stay in Canada. Right now we have this MOU controversy. The MOU, I was trying to think of an analogy. Imagine you and I are trying to get out of a room, and there's a person holding, there's 2 people in a room, and one person's holding the door closed from the inside, and you're both standing there, and then they look at you and go, "We need to do an MOU so we can get out of this room." And I'm like, well, why don't you just move away from the door? Right? What am I getting at? The MOU is to get around the tanker ban that the same people imposed. The MOU is to get around Bill C-69, approved no project law, that they imposed. The MOU is to see whether or not the oil industry can afford to spend 10 or 15 or more dollars a barrel on green fairy dust. And so the people who are responsible for creating these barriers to our growth and our prosperity and releasing to the world that which we're now seeing because the Strait of Hormuz they desperately need, are the same people we're negotiating the MOU with. It's just baffling to me. It makes no sense. By every measure, Albertans will be better off to move forward through independence. And more Albertans are waking up to that reality.
Gentlemen, I know that we probably only have you for a few more minutes. I think that was the deal that we made with you. But before we let you go, I need an update. Either one of you can jump in on the status of great separatist leader Thomas Lukaszik's Forever Canada efforts to get his question approved onto the potential referendum ballot. Well, I guess it's a done deal in October. I know that he was crying and moaning about a panel not being convened quickly enough to address his question. What do we know about where they're at?
My understanding is it's still stuck in committee, and Mr. Nenshi is beating his breast and is most upset that the UCP aren't moving Mr. Lukaszik's question forward quickly enough. But I mean, there's still a huge amount of confusion arising because the question went to the legislature, and Mr. Lukasik said that he didn't want a referendum, and he just wanted the question dealt with by the legislature. So, and then we have the other issue too, that Mr. Lukasik's question is merely a policy question that wouldn't actually pass the smell test with the Clarity Act. So I don't know why the government of Alberta would be spending a bunch of money to put Mr. Lukasik's question on the ballot when his question, as Justice Feasby explained in court, was a pure nothing burger. And those were, nothing burger, to remind everybody, those were the judge's words for that, for that question, not mine.
Keith?
Well, it's either that or it means something. And what the actual wording of the actual form that I've reposted many times, including, I think, yesterday, that Lukasik signed and filled out himself, was calling on the Alberta government to hold a referendum. It doesn't say, I want the Alberta government, the legislature, to decide anything. It says he wants a province-wide referendum. It says, by signing this petition, his petition, you are calling on the Alberta government to hold a province-wide referendum on whether or not Alberta should stay or leave Canada. So, yeah, there's a procedural defect there, but that's a pretty strong signal to the Premier and to her government that Albertans want to vote on this. I expect what's going to happen. She's been pretty clear that there will be an independence question on the ballot on October 19th. It'll be a separate ballot. It will be the first in the stack, and it'll have a standalone independence question on it. I think clearly Stay Free Alberta and Mitch Sylvester's petition is going to be successful. It's going to hit the target and exceed it. And then that will give the mandate to Premier Smith and her cabinet to formulate which precise wording they're going to use. And hopefully they'll use ours, because Jeff and I were very careful to mimic the actual legal test from the Clarity Act right into the question. So we're going to be voting on independence in October, and it's an exciting time because I think we can actually achieve this. And I don't see the negotiations that would follow as being drawn out. My expectation is that we could complete the negotiation process and know where the parties stand within 90 days. The limited functions that Alberta needs to take over from the federal government are all known. There's no mystery here. It's like a passport office. Yeah, we think we can do better. Oh, we'll need border guards at the airports and the borders. Okay, yeah, we'll just hire those guys. Like, it's really actually, when compared to some of the other complex agreements I've been involved in mergers and acquisitions, this one's actually pretty straightforward. I think we can lay out a term sheet and get the deal done and have Alberta a free, independent country in January.
And more importantly, too, in accordance with the secession reference, the federal government and the other provinces have an obligation to negotiate in good faith. And as Keith says, we'll have a term sheet for them. We'll put it on the table. Here are our proposed terms. If they don't want to negotiate in good faith, that then takes Alberta directly into paragraph 155 of the secession reference, which would allow Alberta, in good conscience, with good reason, to unilaterally declare independence from Canada and seek international recognition, which I am very confident would be forthcoming very quickly from the United States and a number of other U.S. Western allies that want to see Alberta freed from the clutches of communist Chinese Ottawa.
Okay, gentlemen, I know we agreed to keep you for just half an hour and we're over that, but I have one more question for you that came up repeatedly on our independence tour, and that is, okay, so let's say that the referendum passes, Albertans vote to leave, the negotiations start. Guys, who does those negotiations?
Well, what I would expect would happen is this, and I've talked about this publicly, is, there is work going on behind the scenes and no announcements have been made, but they'll be coming soon by a group to detail the transition plan and the term sheets for both Ottawa and Washington. And to have all that ready to go and briefed on and presented to the Premier and her group and her team in advance of the vote, so that it's go time once the votes are counted, which would probably come out on the 20th or the 21st of October, because it will take a day or two, because we do manual counts here in Alberta. We don't trust machines anymore. And I support that. And so the premier's going to have two choices. She's going to either have to agree to lead the province into independence and lead those negotiations, or she's going to have to resign and say she just can't do it and have someone take over who can. And the reason I say that is the Supreme Court of Canada was clear in the 1998 reference case that if a clear majority of Albertans vote on a clear question, the parties shall enter into good faith negotiations as to the terms of independence. The Supreme Court of Canada didn't say, unless the sitting premier doesn't want to do it. Okay? So the premier's hands will be tied by law that if she continues to be premier, she will lead those negotiations with Ottawa towards Alberta becoming independent.
You know, and let's be clear too. I mean, Danielle's in a very hard spot right now because a super majority of the UCP membership support independence. And, so, she's a leader of a party continuing to, put forward federalist noises, and trying to pretend to continue to be a federalist when her entire party is heading in a separate direction. So, she's either going to have to get to the head of this parade and internalize the fact that she's going to have to lead Alberta independence, or as Keith says, she's going to have to go the route of David Cameron and resign.
I got one more question for you guys, and if you got to run, don't be shy. I've been studying the rules of these campaigns, and there's the first period, which expires on May 2nd. That's sort of the petition gathering phase. And then I guess on May 3rd, if it's successful, then it's the campaign that goes until October 19th. And Rebel News is very interested in this, and I think we might actually register as a third party because we want to be our typical rambunctious selves, and we don't want to have to worry that Elections Alberta will say we're being too political. But in my research, I've spent some time on the Elections Alberta website, and I'm surprised at how few groups there are putting their oar in the water on what I think is going to be the most important issue of 2026. Just like the trucker convoy was by far the biggest political and news story of 2022, Alberta independence, how could that not be the biggest story of not just of the year, but imagine if it were to succeed, biggest story of the century. And yet I see very few groups that are weighing in yet. Is that just people waiting till May 3rd before they pop up and declare themselves and show their colors? Because I don't see the pro and the con engaging in debate yet. It seems pretty calm before the storm. Any thoughts? Maybe I'm getting this wrong.
No, I think that.
I'll go first, Jeff. I think they're going to show up. I mean, it's early, right? I know of. I was at a meeting last night, and there was a number of people there that talked about the third-party groups they're organizing, and that was the first I'd heard of it. So I think there's going to be a whole multitude of them. Albertans realize this is an existential decision. They see it that way. It's an existential decision for the future of where they want to spend the rest of their lives, for the future of their children and their grandchildren. So no, I think we're going to have no shortage of a third-party groups. The rules, as all of the four of us will know, and the listeners or watchers probably don't, the viewers, the rules are so convoluted and awkward and difficult to navigate for third-party advertisers, and the fact that they even have to be one to take a position on a policy or a political issue is disappointing in my view. But that's the reality. We'll all play by the rules, and I think many groups are going to come forward, coming at this from multiple different angles, because it's so important and it's such a huge opportunity. I just want to point this out. Look what's happening in Australia right now. They're running out of fuel. They're running out of food. The farmers aren't going to be able to get their crops off, right? And remember their season. They have 3 refineries. Alberta has 5. Alberta produces twice as much refined product, diesel, bunker, aircraft fuel, gasoline, than Australia, because we haven't shut down our refineries, we've grown them. The farmers in the U.S. are worried about their ability to seed their crops because of all the fertilizers that's tied up in the ships. Research the number of ships stuck behind the Strait of Hormuz right now. It will blow your mind how many ships. I think it's 1,200 ships are stuck. And so all the shipments of urea, nitrogen fertilizer, are not going to make it to the Mississippi. And so guess one of the places in the world that's a net exporter of urea fertilizer, Alberta. I could keep going. All of these different things that there's a shortage of right now and going to bring economies to a halt, sulfuric acid and so on. We are net exporters of this stuff. The acute shortages that are occurring around the world really demonstrate the superpower of Alberta. And so I'm optimistic we're gonna win this.
And what? Sorry, I know Ezra said one last question, but what happens if we don't?
Well, I don't think we want to contemplate that. I think at that
Good
point,
answer.
we're going, we're into Plan B territory. But one thing I wanted to jump back to, and this sort of gets into Plan B, was the whole discussion of third-party advertisers. Why do you think Elections Canada shut down that independence party that was trying to register from Alberta as an independence party? The reason is under the third-party advertising statute in Alberta, federal political parties are exempt from the third-party advertising requirements. They can raise as much money as they want. They can advertise as much as they want. So what I actually predict is that we could see a whole bunch of different federal political parties popping up in and around Alberta independence, which is going to give Pierre Poilievre absolute fits. Because, of course, Pierre Poilievre has already said on Rogan that he's basically going to be campaigning against Alberta independence. He doesn't believe it's going to happen. I've been saying repeatedly that he's suffering from AIDS, Alberta independence denial syndrome, right? And, and he's not going to be on our side. Danielle, we'll see whether she's going to be on our side or not. That remains to be seen. I personally believe that she's, going to stay on the Federalist side. So, we're going to have a whole bunch of potentially federal political parties now forming. It's not that hard to do. And, it's with a view towards getting around the third-party advertising rules. So I think that's something that's, a potential, for this summer, that's going to become pretty interesting on the Alberta landscape.
These are very interesting days, and I'm worried that the professional political class is overwhelmingly on the side of the Remain. Mm-hmm. Not only every political party, with the possible exception of the Bloc Québécois. The Liberals obviously are going to be for Remain. As you just mentioned, Jeff, the Conservatives are going to be on the side of Remain. They have to be. I mean, they're a Federalist Party in Ottawa. They're not going to suddenly...
Well, and so are most of Alberta's billionaires. All of the people that made all of their billions in the context of the system as it exists now, with their tax shelter set up under the existing rules, with their connections to the Toronto Stock Exchange under the existing rules, with their investments set up the way they are, the Murray Edwardses of the world and their connections with communist China, Brett Wilson, all of those people are going to be on the Remain side. Michael Binion, his view is to, basically instead of the group that Keith is putting together, come up with their own little group of negotiators to push anybody in favor of independence out of the way at the last minute, and then negotiate reconfederation, not Alberta independence, but some form of renewed Canadian federalism that none of us are interested in. So all of those things are on the table, and those are all things that, Keith and I and others are going to have to negotiate over the next 6 months.
All right. I was just going to say, I think we're well past the time that the gentleman committed to us. But before we let you go, perhaps, Keith, could you tell us how people can find out more information about the Stay Free Alberta efforts?
Well, go to the Stay Free Alberta website. It's really important. A lot of people signed the Alberta Prosperity Project online commitment to sign the petition, and they think they've signed the petition. That's not true. If you have to appear before a canvasser that has a Elections Alberta badge, and you have to sign an ink signature on a very specific Elections Alberta issued form. So if you're one of those people that went to the website months ago, go to the Stay Free Alberta website. There's an interactive feature on that website that allows you to pick your address, your municipality. There are thousands of canvassers out there. There's pop-up locations. There's permanent storefront locations. Sign, get your neighbors to sign. Everybody's got to sign. It's critically important. I'm going to continue to be doing updates on specific issues through the YouTube channel that I started, Keith Wilson, KC, constitutional lawyer. The people can follow me on Twitter. Jeff has a Twitter account as well. And we're just going to keep going. And this is the right thing to do. It makes sense by every measure. And I think that's why we're going to win.
Jeff, where can people find out more about your efforts?
Well, again, stayfreealberta.com. That's the official campaign. Those are my efforts. Those are Mitch's efforts that we're involved in. My X account, we post official notices there. That's at Jeffrey R.W. Rath on X, and at Stay Free Alberta on X. The one thing I do want to put out there is that we currently now have over 7,000 canvassers registered. They are the heart and soul and backbone of this effort. And I know it's been a long campaign, everyone. We have 40 days left, and we need to redouble our efforts. We need to be able to crush whatever number it was that Lukasik and the Forever Communist / Forever Canada group turned in. I can't stress how important it is that everybody that has a canvassing badge, get out there, knock on doors, get all of your neighbors, get all of your family, get all of your friends that haven't signed to sign. Keep turning those sheets into your regional leaders, as soon as you can. Keep the effort going. It's got to be pedal to the metal for the next 40 days. We're literally fighting for the lives and futures of our children and our grandchildren. And to everybody that's out there, in the cold, in the rain, in the snow, in the wind, God bless all of you. And thank you so much for your work, to date. We're so grateful to all of you. And I'm just asking everybody to dig deeper. We know you can. We're all Albertans. Let's just roll up our sleeves and do what we do. Let's just work and work and work until we get this done. So anyway, I'd like to thank everybody that's involved in this campaign and just keep it going.
Great. Thank you, Keith Wilson. Thank you, Jeffrey Rath, for your efforts to free this province from the confines of Confederation and your efforts to counter the disinformation campaign that is really ramping up on the other side. We'll talk soon. We'll hit an ad break and we'll be back on the other side.
Okay.
Budget 2026 is focused on what matters, including record investments in healthcare, with a strong focus on supporting more doctors and nurse practitioners and providing the services patients rely on most, including an additional 50,000 surgeries. We're also adding much-needed acute care capacity to our hospitals and emergency departments. Budget 2026, focused on what matters.
Gun bans make great distractions.
Trudeau may be gone, but Carney has picked up his same rhetoric.
We will quickly, and I mean quickly, reinvigorate the buyback of
Hunters, collectors, competitors, and defenders of tradition are still being targeted, while criminals run wild under Liberal policy. But we are fighting back. Join us, Canada's National Firearms Association, in defense of freedom.
All right, we've got a quick ad read from our friends at Rumble Wallet. We need to pay the bills around here. They can freeze your accounts, shut off your cards, lock you out of your own money overnight. Banks don't protect you, they control you. That's why real financial freedom starts with ownership. Introducing Rumble Wallet, a non-custodial wallet built for people who refuse to give up control. With Rumble Wallet, you don't just buy digital currency like Bitcoin and Tether, you can own Tether Gold, real gold on the blockchain. Through Tether Gold, you get direct ownership of physical gold bars, each one fully allocated, verifiable by serial number, purity, and weight. This isn't paper gold. This isn't an IOU. This is real gold without bank vaults, storage fees, or gatekeepers. You can buy, sell, or move it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even when traditional gold markets are closed. And if you want, Tether Gold can be redeemed for physical gold. That's power. And when you support creators on Rumble, you can tip them directly using Rumble Wallet, peer-to-peer and outside of the banking system. No permissions, no middlemen, no cancel buttons. This wallet is yours forever. All right, let's get back into the rest of the show. I'm flying alone now, but the good news is I spent a lot of time by myself in my studio, talking to myself and talking to the camera. So I'm going to be just fine. Ezra's got a previous engagement, so he's got to run. So we'll try to get through a few remaining things on the schedule. I think we've got about 9 minutes left in the show. One thing I wanted to show everybody from yesterday happened at SECU. So that is the Public Safety Committee in the House of Commons. And they were really giving it to, as you know, my political muse, Gary Anandasangari, our public safety minister, who is a public safety issue for Sri Lankans, at least according to their foreign affairs minister, when Gary Anandasangari was running for the Liberal nomination and he won against Dan McTeague, who is an actual old school good guy Liberal. They said to Justin Trudeau, please don't sign his nomination papers because of his ties to the Tamil terrorist community. But of course, Justin Trudeau did anyway. And for some reason now he's our public safety minister. And that makes him the chief gun grabber in this country. Many of you regular viewers of the show know that I'm highly critical of Gary Anandasangari as the chief gun grabber, because not only does he not have his PAL or his ARP PAL, so the 2 levels of gun licensing in this country, he doesn't know what those things require. He doesn't know what you are subject to on a daily basis with regard to security screening. He doesn't know that there are red flag laws in effect. He doesn't know that some nerd from the firearms office has to interview your conjugal partners to give you permission to hold your gun license. So think about what that would do to you if you were going through a divorce or a bad breakup or whatever, right? However, that is the case here in Canada. Not that the guy in charge would actually know anything about it. He was at SECU yesterday, and he was grilled by Alberta Conservative MP Dane Lloyd. Dane, if you're watching, I'm a big fan of what you did to Gary Anandasangari yesterday. He put him on the spot and he said, so what are you going to do to confiscate the guns from law-abiding Canadians? Like, how are you planning to do this? And what are you going to do if they don't comply? And his plan is going to blow your mind. And if you are a retired cop out there, I want to hear from you. I know some of you watch. I know some of you are watching right now. But I heard in the X comments, a lot of them are like, the hell we are. And this is going to cause a lot more harm than good. And it's going to make it very dangerous. But I just want you to listen to Dane Lloyd and his questions, and then Gary Anandasangari's questions. And you have to be like a dangerous idiot to be suggesting the things that he's suggesting. So just watch.
And witnesses for being here. Minister, the declaration period for firearms owners is scheduled to end next week. So far, only 2.5% of the estimated 2 million affected firearms have been declared, and 98% of firearms owners haven't made a declaration. So if they're not declaring by next week, what's your plan, Minister?
So if you will recall, the number of prohibited firearms are far less than I think your number indicates. We have over 26,000 individuals representing over 2,000 firearms that have been declared, prohibited firearms that have been declared. And the plan we have is, as of March the 31st, the time to complete the enrollment will be done, and then the RCMP and other agencies will be available throughout the spring and the summer to do the collection.
So, Minister, you're saying that RCMP members, we just heard an Auditor General report saying we're short 3,400 members. We're dealing with a wave of violent crime across this country, and you're saying that your plan is over the spring and the summer to deploy RCMP officers to go door to door to firearms owners and seize their firearms?
So this is a voluntary program, Mr. Lloyd, as you're aware. And the RCMP resources and the resources we will use with law enforcement does not contemplate in any way using existing resources. These are additional resources, so these are those who are off duty, those who may be retired. Quebec, for example, SQ, for example, has their own mechanism, but let me be very clear, it is in no way to take away from existing police resources. The resources that we have available contemplate that individuals who are off duty, and I can ask if you want the commissioner to comment on it. I can ask him to do that.
Minister, I just find that very concerning that we're going to be sending police officers door to door because, frankly, many police forces across the country are refusing to participate in your program. Right. And I think they have very good reasons to not want to participate in this program. And putting people who are no longer serving as RCMP officers going door to door. Are you not concerned about this at all, Minister?
Well, I think you may not understand the full extent of the program, Mr. Lloyd. It's not a door-to-door program. It is a mobile collection will occur, so individuals will be bringing forth prohibited firearms.
The people that have declared, Minister?
There are people who've declared.
What about the people who haven't declared?
Well,
exactly.
The program that we have in place is voluntary, strictly voluntary, so they're not compelled to take part in the program, although compliance with the law is not voluntary. And that, as you're aware, as of October the 31st, or 30th of this year, the amnesty that was extended expires.
So after that amnesty expires, what's your government's plan for those firearms owners that might still be in possession of these firearms?
Every police of jurisdiction will, as you're aware, need to enforce the law. Canada is a rule of law country. One that requires adherence to the law.
Minister.
So did you get that? He wants to send off-duty police officers and retired RCMP officers to come collect your guns. If you are a retired RCMP officer, are you going to participate in this? By the way, if you're retired, you don't have any special status. You can't just come to my house and say, Sheila, give me your guns. Gary Nandasangari sent me. I'm going to tell you to get off my property real fast. And this is just a way to get people hurt. Not only that, I don't think, besides the fact that retired RCMP officers don't have some sort of special status under the law, I just don't think that they're going to want to do this. Call me crazy, but all the cops that I know, most of them, signed up to serve and protect because they actually care about defending your rights. And many of them are sport shooters just like the rest of us. And many of them are having their own rights trumped on too because they're firearms owners. Do you think that while dirtbags are running amok on the streets of this country that they're going to be like, you know what? Put me back in, coach. I've got to go disarm the lady folk who live 30 minutes out of town. It's just a recipe for disaster. And again, he doesn't even understand what the plan is here. He's one of the dumbest MPs in the House of Commons, and that is saying something because that Liberal bench, man, it is shallow. It is shallow. Before we go, we've got one more clip from the headlines that we need to get to, and then I'll get to, I guess we have a couple of chats, one chat anyway. And it's a very generous one, so I should not delay in getting to it. And this one is from Immigration Minister Lena Diab. If you watched the show yesterday, you saw her get her ass handed to her by Michelle Rumpel-Garner in Immigration Committee. She says Canadians elected this government last year because they know this government has a plan. What's the plan? I don't know. I don't know, and neither does she. So let's watch. Oh, she's going to squint her way through this.
Canadians elected this government last year because they know that this government has a plan. Our plan has results. It is not based on a script as they do on the other side. Over the last year, we've reduced temporary residents by more than half. We brought the asylum numbers by more than a third. We've refocused economic immigration like never before it's been done. Canadians can see that this government is focused and has a plan. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Did she look like she was trying to fight off a swarm of bees there? What was going on there? Like her, look, I know you guys write me, I know, and it's been pointed out to me very recently. I do talk with my hands. I emote with my hands. But this lady looks frightened, like there's a swarm of something coming at her, and it might be criticism and fact checking from her absolute BS and lies. They have only ordered the removal of one IRGC terrorist. They don't know how many of them are in the country. They've identified 24 that are in the refugee queue, but that only means that they've identified 24 in the refugee queue. They've ordered one deported, yet he remains. That's all they've done. We know that asylum seekers are still getting hundreds of thousands of dollars, and actually, it's even more than that. I wrote it up this morning because an order paper question came in. The 8,500 asylum seekers are still being housed in hotels in this country. There are absolutely next to zero inspections for illegal temporary foreign work being used in this country. They don't know where they're sending the temporary foreign workers. They don't even break it down by sector, really. They don't care if they send a bunch of temporary foreign work to a community that's already struggling with 16% unemployment. Like, let's say the mill in your community just closes. They don't care if they dump 50 temporary foreign workers in your town. They don't care. They don't know. They don't care. They're just like, they're here. Let them go. They also admitted yesterday in an order paper that we talked about yesterday that of immigration review hearings, well over 90% of those hearings, the immigration bureaucrats don't show up to contest them. So if you just get into the country illegally, say you come in as a temporary foreign worker, say you come in as a student from the world's largest democracy on the Indian subcontinent. So you're not oppressed, you just like it here better. And then you claim asylum, chances are you're going to get it. And you don't even have to go through the, the Canadian wedding, the Canadian anchor baby to sponsor you. And you don't need to do that. You're just going to get it. It might be 10 years down the road because the system is so collapsed by having so many people claiming asylum all at once illegally, but you're probably just going to get it because the immigration bureaucrats are not showing up to contest you. So, Lena, you're an idiot and a liar. And I don't know. Between her and Gary and Sangari, which one do you guys think is dumber? Let me know in the comments. It's tough, I know. It's like choosing between which one of your kids you love the most. but in a bad way. All right. I think that's the show for today. Thanks for bearing with me as I sort of flew alone without a co-pilot. It's kind of difficult to talk to yourself when you don't have somebody to bounce your ideas off of. But I think we did okay for the last 20 minutes of the show. We've got one super chat here, and I can't believe how generous this is. It's from JP Alberta First, who is already excessively generous with us. He chats with us just about every day, sometimes a couple of times a day, but he threw in $100 today, referencing Keith Wilson's analogy about the door being closed, and all you need someone to do on the other side is open the door. The door analogy was very appropriate and funny. Both Mr. Rath and Mr. Wilson, thank you for all of your hard work. Both, in my opinion, should be forever known as the founding fathers of Alberta, just as Ben Franklin or Thomas Jefferson. Yeah, I think they will be remembered favorably in and around the independence discussion in the new country. Well, everybody, that's the show for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back in the chair tomorrow with, I believe, Tamara Ugolini on Thursday. And thanks to those of you who shared the show, interact with the show, especially you, JP Alberta First. Thank you so much for that generous super chat. You know, we don't take any money from the government, so we rely on your generosity to keep the lights on around here. And as we say on the show here, if you find us offensive, maybe don't find us at all. Alberta is at a crossroads. For years, I've heard the frustration. I've felt it too, but frustration doesn't build a country. Preparation does. In my new book, Independence Blueprint, What Alberta Can Learn from Quebec, I break down the hard mechanics of sovereignty, what we can learn from Quebec's 1995 referendum, the research that's already been done, and what would actually come next for a free Alberta. There's the constitutional process, currency, pensions, continuity of services, trade, resource control, Indigenous partnership, and international recognition. These aren't slogans. This isn't fantasy. These are just hard facts and serious preparation. Whether Alberta stays or goes, we need to understand the stakes. Head over to buy your copy today at independenceblueprint.ca. Let's be prepared, because our time is now.